I gravitate towards people who are very vulnerable. And by that, I think is a true sign of strength. Like, we're all insecure on some level, but if you can voice those and be transparent and kind, I think just that's the people I like to surround myself with.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, voracious book reader, and skilled chef. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 88 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this show, we have Laura Clausen with us. Three of my favorite things about this episode is that Laura gives great advice to her younger self. Listen out for when she talks about that. Just in general, she has awesome energy. We got to shoot this and record this in her beautiful studio. So it was a lot of fun, great energy. She was really a pleasure to talk to and really funny too. So that was cool. And then when she talked about things being better done than perfect, I could totally relate. I think that's a wise strategy. So I really liked it. I think y'all will enjoy the interview. Remember, if you want to reach me, you can email me, podcast@amaniexperience.com. Feel free to join and donate some money to the Patreon. You can find that at patreon.com/AmaniExperience. And time for the show. Thank you very much for listening, and to the show we go. Our guest today has been collecting dishes since 2010. A month after she started collecting dishes, she had over 800 pieces and she was off and running. She taught herself how to create a website, and within 3 weeks, she had her first order. She now has a thriving business called Dish Wish Events. I would like to welcome Laura Clausen to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Hi, so happy to be here.
We are happy to be here. We're excited. Tell us where we are right now.
We are in El Segundo, California, in a little 1,100 square foot studio underneath my house.
Yes, it's a beautiful studio. I love how you have it all organized and decorated, so well done.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley.
All right.
Yes.
So you're from the Valley, and then once you were kind of finishing high school, you went off to Chapman University?
I did. You did a little digging for that, didn't you?
So we do our little research here. So explain to us kind of, maybe we'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, like how you got from Chapman to your first job, which I believe was like Blue Line Pictures when you went out. So talk to us about your journey.
Wow, you
there.
really did do some digging here. So I had wanted to go to film school, and I applied to a few different ones. And my mom informed me that if I went to LMU or USC, that I could commute from home, and that sounded absolutely horrible to me. So, and she wouldn't let me apply to anywhere even further than that. Like Northern California was out of the question. So Chapman was just far enough that I couldn't live at home. So that was my choice. And it was a good experience there. I will say that the film school program, and I ended up doing broadcast journalism for a while, it was really focused on teaching you every aspect of the job. So even if you wanted to be on camera, they're like, no, you need to know how to roll the cords. You need to know how to set the camera up. And I think that's why so many of my colleagues that continued in that field are doing so well, is because the industry changed so much in the 3-4 years after we graduated, to the point that like you needed to know all those things. So I think now in my career now, it's helped me just knowing how to be balanced and how to have appreciation for what everybody's job was. Even if I only did one job, just to understand what the process was, I think was really important.
Nice. And then when you graduated, you started at Blue Line Pictures. What was that job like?
Okay, so that probably sounds very glamorous, but it wasn't. So my next door neighbor, my freshman year, was this guy named Will, and he had a redheaded mother, and she was like typical mom with like one, little baby boy. He didn't know how to buy toilet paper. He didn't know anything. And so she came over to my room and said, like, you'll take care of him, right? So that guy dropped out of school, became an actor in a bunch of Scientology films. Him and I stayed friends, probably because his mom still needed me to take care of him. I don't know. And he ended up working in entertainment field, and he started Blue Line Pictures, which did a few different things, but I don't know that all of them are on the up and up. So I helped him with that until I thought that maybe it wasn't the best thing. But truly, it's so random how life happens, right? Like, so when I graduated film school, the jobs to get were working for an agency or working like as a PA on a shoot, a movie or TV or commercial or whatever. And at that time, I just wanted to travel. I wanted to like see the world. And when you get those jobs, like there's no room for taking time off. And so as selfish as it sounds, like I just felt like it wasn't the right time. And so life just sort of took me on a different path just because I didn't accept those. I did work at CAA for a little while and absolutely hated it. It was just miserable. Everybody wanted the other person's job and just felt like very toxic. I will say my friend who got me there is the head of like creative development at Comedy Central and is doing super well. And I'm so proud of him, but he had that like no bullshit kind of thing. You know, he didn't care if anyone liked him. Whereas like I just wanted to go to lunch with everyone and have fun. So anyway, so here I am. Yeah.
Here you are. You have a very unique business. I'm so excited to talk to you about it because it's very different. It's very unique. It's been very successful. So really excited to learn more. And I've heard about you for a while, so now we get to talk. So
I hope I haven't already talked too much.
Oh, yeah. No. There's no such thing. Don't worry. There's no such thing. So after Blue Line Pictures, walk us through how you got from there to starting your own business and maybe some motivation to start your own business as you got to that journey.
Sure, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible. So actually one of my favorite jobs and one of the jobs I did growing up was I worked for a nonprofit theater company that I actually grew up in. And it did focus on performance, yes, but really the greater picture was self-confidence, team building, just a lot of different core things that we all need as, our own entrepreneurs in life, if you will. And I absolutely loved that job. And there was a student in the program whose father, was the COO, he was, of a company that owned a bunch of different dental brands. The most known on the consumer side would be 1-800-DENTIST.
Got it.
And I guess they had been looking for someone in their PR department for a while. And I had absolutely no PR qualifications. In fact, I took a public relations class in college and hated it because I like to write, but I don't like to write in a rigid format with succinct, as you can tell by the way I'm talking, a succinct way of speaking. So I don't know how I got that job. In fact, it was a really interesting interview process. You interviewed with the COO, the CEO and the COO of the company, and then everyone in the marketing department, you'd be at a long boardroom table and they'd be firing questions at you. It was a really intense interview process. And I would say that was the most serious job I'd had right out of school. So it was kind of trial by fire. But apparently I survived. So I worked there and I think I learned a lot in that job. And being that it was one of the first ones I had, I don't think I appreciated it as much as I should have.
Right.
Given I just didn't have something to compare it to. But the guy that actually had gotten me in the door, his name was Larry. And he so valued corporate culture. And at a time, I think, when it was rare for you to see that in companies. I mean, Zappos was kind of doing, they actually took a lot of us to Zappos at the time to kind of see that. But at the time, and companies weren't really talking about, summer Fridays and making people feel valued and whatnot. So I think I really got a lot out of that. I can't say that I always felt perfectly happy in that job, but looking back, I think that it was a really great, work is work. You're there to do a job, but I think they did a really good job of making us feel valued and seen and whatnot. So that's definitely kind of been a part of how I like to lead and manage. I completely forget what the original question was, but so that job. So you asked me how I got here. So that kind of got me into this rabbit hole of marketing. I worked at a few different companies and then kind of got back into dental somehow, and just found I don't know, just not being super satisfied with that. And how Dishwish started was, I like to say that I'm a third-generation compulsive shopper. Meaning that I just find things to collect. I'll get into phases. I still do it to this day. Dishes weren't something I don't cook a lot. I don't like to host parties with a lot of people. If I have a party, paper plates are out. It's even to this day. So in a 3-week period of time, don't ask me why, I just sort of started. I bought a collection of dishes from an older woman in Santa Monica who just was so quaint and sweet, and I just sort of got on this kick of liking the energy of the pieces, and so I amassed 850 or so in 3 weeks. I thought I was insane, and I was telling a girlfriend of mine at happy hour one day about it, and we actually had been there to talk about my marketing consulting company, and she was going to help me with my logo on that. So we were kind of drafting the ideas on that. And for some reason, the conversation just kept getting back to these dishes and how I loved them and how I wanted to keep buying them. And she's like, well, why don't we make a logo for both? Like, we'll make one for Dishwish. I was calling it Dishwish at the time.
Right.
Because I was like, I don't know. So we like drew on cocktail napkin, and I don't even think I took more than 2 clients in my marketing job, because I suddenly was, oh my God, the scope of this. Like, everyone has a million questions. I like, somehow with Dishwish, it just took like on a life of its own. Like, I definitely didn't set out to be a business. So I'm talking in circles. But
You're doing
the point being that
fine.
if I love females, but I looked at the wedding industry. Looking at this, I thought, okay, it's like even showers. That seems to be like a female-centric thing. I looked at it as like, I don't want to be in a catty, like, chick fight thing. Like, that's just not my energy. That's not my style. So I looked upon it as like, I don't want to get into that. So if I had thought that it was going to be a business, I probably would have talked myself out of it.
Really?
The fact that it happened the way it did, I think, was so perfect, because
Interesting.
I wasn't really trying. I was trying, but my whole heart wasn't in it. I wasn't like, if this fails, my life is over. And actually, it's interesting, Gabby of Cosby County Events had introduced us. I met her and a girl by the name of Nicole Alexandra right in the beginning. Yeah. And I credit these 2 Canadians, because they were such lovely females. They were all about building each other up. And without them, I think, or meeting good people in the beginning, I think I also would have shied away. But I was really fortunate to meet like really awesome creative collaborators in the beginning that I thought.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great story. Yeah. We want to go back to when you said you grew up in the theater. So what kind of performance art did you do growing up in the theater?
I liked performing, but again, like going back to the competition thing, like that was so not my jam. But what was interesting about the group I grew up in was that they would do multiple castings. So let's say if there was Annie, like they wouldn't just have one Annie, they'd have 5 Annies. So, like, what day you got cast, like, if you were Friday night, like, you were the best. But, like, they had the day that was the best. So, I think it lent itself to this whole competition thing. So, as much as I liked the performing, yes, but, like, what performer? Like, I was in musical theater. So, like, I sang, I danced, whatnot. I never wanted to be an actress. Like, that just because of the competition part. But I liked the teaching part so much. I liked, because you didn't have to audition to be part of the group. They took everyone. And it was age-appropriate roles. So there was adults in it as well. And I just liked, like, finding the kid in the back that, like, maybe was a little bit shy and, like, but was really, just finding those things about them. Because, again, the program was focused on theater, yes, but more of an overall, like, that being, like, the sounding, like, jumping off board,
Exactly.
For, like, self-confidence, other things. And I've had, like, so many people reach out to me later in life, like, and say, like, that, I made a difference, and that makes me feel so, so great. So
wonderful. Yeah. And then Dishwish has been here since 2011, still going strong.
Yes. We're going through a bit of a transition now, which has been a long time coming. But yeah, no, it's really cool.
Good. Props to you for lasting that long and many more years. So good job.
Thank you.
If you were going to summarize yourself where you are right now in life and your career in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
I would say like building and growing. I think, in the beginning, like I mentioned, I wasn't set out to be a business. I didn't take this as like, this is my business, this is my livelihood, whatnot. And I think right now my business is going through that transition. I'm a mom now, and so this life is a lot different. So as far as 30 seconds or less who I am, I'm somebody who's in transition to building a brand, building a business.
Wonderful. And then in your opinion, what's important for a creative professional such as yourself or myself to succeed in today's business environment?
That's a tough one. I was just telling somebody last night that as much as social media is so important to all of us in our brands and our careers, I personally really struggle with it. I struggle with following people that do the same thing because I feel that in a way it is inspiring, yes. But then if it's somewhat similar to something you want to do or has notes of that, then if you haven't done it or produced it or done it in the way that it's now getting all this credit, I think it can feel like a creativity suck. Like, think about it. Prior to all these images and all this content being thrown at us, people were doing things all around the world and we didn't know. So we were kind of in our lane doing our stuff. And I think it's hard now, like, to really understand, like, there is room for all of us. Like, even if it's already been done, it's not going to be done in the way we've had. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes exact sense.
I think it's hard to balance that, to create the content, be aware of what's going on, but also really stay grounded and stay mindful. Like, it's okay that you know, there's other people out there doing it.
So if there are lots of people who struggle with exactly what you just described, what advice would you give them or tips would you give them to kind of trying to continue to stay in their lane and not get distracted?
That's so hard because I feel like that's what we were talking about, being in transition. And for so long, probably like 2 years now, I've really struggled with Instagram in particular. And for a while, I really enjoyed it. But now it's like, you know, the colors and everything's got to be in a grid and so many people hiring third parties. Like, to me, that's not what it was about in the beginning. It was about like it was a window to seeing who the person really was. And I guess it's probably not the right advice, but for me, I don't plan on hiring somebody. Like, I still want that to be a window to me and what my business does authentically. And I don't want to think too much about like, did I use all beige in this window? Because that's not how my ADD brain is. So when I get back into it, which now that we have more stuff, I will. I guess like just staying true. I always thought that people would start to see through that whole thing of now everything's so branded, so perfect, you know, so filtered. That's probably a good way to say it.
It is.
I think that the actual users that really appreciate that medium, I think as more and more content starts to get so curated, there will be a pushback, and maybe they'll go on to other things. That's why I was really certain that Snapchat was going to start to take off, because it felt like you were less able to control the content. But then I also don't use, I don't know. So anyways.
Yes. There's beauty in the imperfections.
Yeah, and the authenticity of it to me,
Agree. Yeah, definitely. I'm on your boat there. So yeah, we'll go that together. What was the turning point? When you started your business, when did you realize like, whoa, this is like legit, I'm both feet in and we're kind of taking off running?
You know, I think it was when people that I had really been inspired by started to reach out to me for rentals or, you know, and said such complimentary things. I think there's one designer in particular, and she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Her name is Lisa Vorst. She's a florist turned designer. She's one of the top wedding planners in the world. And what I love about her is like she doesn't go around like saying she's the shit, but she is. I mean, she absolutely is. And yeah, she was just so gracious and kind. And I've met people along the way that, by no fault of their, I mean, they haven't been to the places she's, you know, Kate Upton's wedding, whatever. And yet they don't treat people with kindness. They don't treat the hotel staff politely or whatnot. And yeah, so that's when I realized like, wow, like, and it was such a good testament too, to see like, yeah, you can get to the top and you can do it by being kind and by being yourself. And yeah.
Yeah. Good example.
Yeah.
Why do you love what you do?
I love the creative part of it. I love that the same pieces can be used in so many different ways and look completely different. How I got into it, and I think at the time I started collecting the vintage stuff, the rental market just wasn't caught up with what you were seeing in homes and interiors, and it was so far behind. And I think mainly because, not to be sexist, but I think a lot of older men were owning these rental companies, and they didn't see any need to have anything different than like a white plate, maybe a black plate, you know, like something very basic. And people weren't realizing that, no, people, like now with all this imagery, people want events that are very personal to them. It doesn't matter what reason for the event. They want something that's personal to them. That's an aesthetic that mimics who they are. And I think the vintage craze really started because those pieces were attainable to people, and they could find something that felt different and felt approachable. Maybe that it was not fancy like a big elaborate gold dinner plate was at a rental company at the time, or that it felt like unbuttoned, or I don't know, just something that was more them than what was currently on the market. I personally never was into like the really rustic trend, which was kind of around when I first started. But yeah, it's interesting that I started with vintage because it was never my personal aesthetic. However, what I liked about it was that you can mix it up so many different ways and really get a more personal feel for your event. Yeah.
Definitely. And what do you do, because you're creative, what do you do to kind of fill up your creative cup? Because we all have to get inspiration and we go through ups and downs. So how do you fill up your creative cup and get re-inspired?
You know what? I mean, I watch terrible trash, Bravo TV, but I can't say that I get a lot of inspiration for that. But I will say that I find a lot by hearing other people yell about nothing. It shuts down my anxiety about actual things. But what do? I do like to look at magazines, like printed magazines. I know it sounds really dorky, but I like to look at printed magazines. Although now that we're in this industry, you start to realize, like, okay, well, but by the time it's printed, it almost feels like done. Again, like it just starts to get out of control. You know, where your mind goes a million different directions of like, has this been done? Can I do it? Anyway.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not following my own advice, right? Which is don't care. If you don't care, just do it from you. Yeah, but I read magazines or look at the pictures, I should say. And I like to watch trash TV. Yeah.
Enough said. Love it. Unique answer. On the flip side, what is something that scares you?
It scares me, for me personally, that I waited too long. And I think you might ask, this might be a direction we're going in the podcast, but I've wanted to do something that was more personal to me and more my aesthetic for years. And for personal reasons, which we might get into later, I didn't. And now I just worry it's been too long. There's a lot. The market's way more saturated than it was 4 years ago.
Right. I don't think it's been too long. I think you've come into it at your right time. So I'll say that. And that kind of leads us to our next question, which is, our industry, your industry specifically, vintage space is very crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
For whatever reason, I think that I've had a lot of opportunities to be a more personal face to a business. And I know a lot of, and I'm friendly with a lot of the people that had similar businesses, some of which have chosen not to do their business anymore for their own personal reasons. I think it's been fun to collaborate. I've built a lot of great relationships with planners that I really truly have always looked upon as friends. And for me personally, and this may just be because, again, I didn't set this out to be this, businesswoman, hawking these dishes at people, but I don't look at my relationship with a planner simply as what can this person do for me. I really care about them, and like you mentioned Anna Braff, who but I went out with her and her husband. Like, it was not about what can this girl do for me, but really about who is she? Like, I want to meet her kids, and that's just kind of who I am. So I think that's really what I've enjoyed about it and what set me apart, I guess. Wow. But again, that sounds contrived that I'm doing it that way. I don't know.
It's your way. You're doing it your way, for sure. Now, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I will say that I feel fortunate that we haven't had a failure. Okay, so I'll tell you about something that happened. It wasn't a failure specifically, but it was one of those moments where you cringe, oh. And I know we're not supposed to name names, but I'm totally gonna name names. So 2 years into doing Dish Wish, we used to have these cute little wire crates. It looked very vintage. They weren't vintage. That we'd send the dishes out, and I had vintage linens that I had collected that lined those crates. So when you got a little crate from us, it wasn't just a typical, mass party rentals black plastic crate. It was kind of cute, and it was wrapped with this vintage embroidered linen. And we were doing a wedding at the Marvamon, which I don't think exists anymore, and with a good planner. And there's a very high-end caterer. I'll say the name of the catering company. I won't say the name of the person. Heirloom Catering, which was A+ caterer. And she was putting the dishes out on the tables. This was I guess she's the captain or the salesperson. I don't even know if she works there anymore. She's not very nice. Anyways, she said, "Are we supposed to put these dishes back in these crates with this fabric?" And she was so disgusted. And listen, I get it that it wasn't a plastic crate. I mean, she could line it with a trash. So those of you that don't know, the rental process for a plate, typically it comes in a plastic, very dirty if it comes from a mass rental company. I will say, look at those crates. They're filthy. Okay. And then at the end of the night, the catering crew lines that plastic tote with a garbage bag, puts the dirty stuff in it, ties it up, and it's gone. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if the crate had fabric in it or not. But anyway, she was very disgusted by it. And I just remember thinking, I wanted to impress this fancy caterer and whatnot. But anyway, it turns out on that same wedding, that catering company decided to put 8 inches of water at the bottom of the lined trash bag and ruined so many things. And then tried to make it everyone else's fault.
Oh, no.
But really what happened was some of the staffers that they had were like drunk. It was a big mess. It was totally a mess. But needless to say, the biggest failure was, I guess, those those embroidered linen, which we have since changed. We do not send out any linen anymore.
Right.
Just because we thought we were like being economical, like no bubble wrap, saving the planet. But,
good. Keep saving the planet.
Yeah.
As you acquire more success, we learn that we acquire more critics, more haters, as we call them. So I'm interested to see, how do you handle your critics? Because you have such great energy. So I'm trying to think, how do you not let them affect you and bring you down?
I feel fortunate enough that I don't feel like a lot of like trolls have really come after me. And I say like internet trolls is people that like just like blast you with comments that don't even really make sense or whatnot. Like I've seen some of my friends, anyway, some of my friends Yelp, site like the people Yelp review, and you're like, did this person even use my service?
Exactly.
So thankfully, I don't feel like I've ever really been blasted by anyone in that sphere. But I do think that there's a certain level, there's certain clients that have a level of expectation, I think, that is beyond reason. So how do we handle that? Well, I don't know, just be kind. Like usually we end up just giving them, we just want them to be happy. So like we give in like to whatever it is and just try to like give them something that makes them feel better or happy. We really have been fortunate. I mean, we really haven't had any problems, thankfully.
Good.
Online, in person, whatever.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Keep going. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Sure. So kind of leaning on what I had said before about a few years ago wanting to build the business and then not. So again, when I first got into this, vintage wasn't my personal aesthetic. I'd always sort of wanted to move in sort of a contemporary direction and had some plans to do that. And at the time I was married and we were going through some hard times, and it just financially, like he wasn't working and it was tough. So to take on that just felt like irresponsible for me. And then it turns out that he was spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars behind my back. And from there, we decided to separate and divorce. And though we parted amicably, I just wasn't certain how... Divorce is a long process. And even if you sign the papers, there's like a process where they could still come after you and blah, 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 blah. So during that process, I just wasn't sure about even building the business at that point because I didn't know like if he'd come after me, like if just what would happen. Mm-hmm. So basically by the time I was done with that and ready to build the business, I found out that I was having a baby. And if any of you that are listening have been pregnant, I got so exhausted. Like the last thing I could think to do would be to like be creative at that point. Like getting out of bed was a challenge. So my daughter is now 1. And I am finally where I wanted to be 4 years ago. And like you said, I'm not like, yes, maybe it was meant to be this time. It is frustrating in a lot of ways that it wasn't earlier. And I'm thankful for that dark time in my life because it really gave me the confidence, like the fact that I'm still here and that, we didn't die.
No, you didn't die. You're still here. Yes.
And I credit that to like the wonderful team that I've had and definitely like keeping it going when I was too tired to polish those forks. Yeah.
For people out there who are maybe going through something similar, what advice would you have for them so that they can kind of get through and continue to thrive as you are?
It's tough. Our economy has seen changes even in the sense I built the business too. So that of course affects things. And that being said, like, the clients now, I think, are going back to spending more money than they did. There was a point where I think people were really nickeling and diming stuff. And they still do on some level, but I think for the most part, everybody wants beautiful events. So in my line of work, it helps because even though it is a luxury item, quote unquote, or something they don't absolutely need, I think they want it enough that they figure out a way to do it. So as far as advising people, it really just depends on what their goals are. Like maybe the timing doesn't make sense for them to do it now. And I don't know, everyone's going through so much personally. I can't say that I have this profound advice. I think it really just comes down to knowing in your gut that it's the right time.
Okay, good. Now I understand that you wish you would have been kind of an early 20-something in the 80s.
Yeah. How did you even find that?
Explain to us what that's about. That's very interesting.
Well, listen, I have big hair, which got like oddly curly only in the back after I had a baby, so that was never in style. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like big hips and like metal bands, like, you know, hair bands. I would love to be in the front row, just being super irresponsible. In the 80s, I don't know. I just think I miss my. How did you even find that?
That's a good fun fact. I have a research team. You know, fun facts. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, I must have said that somewhere. Yeah, no, I think I miss my era. Yeah, but
you can bring it back.
It's a great time to be alive, right? No,
yeah, definitely.
And no Instagram, no social media to have intimidating us, right?
Right. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
So I mentioned that theater company. The man who started it, his name is Alex Urban. He's since passed, unfortunately, but he really taught me to see things for not as they are, meaning like to look at, you know, like things just as what you could make them to be. And I think that's really has inspired me in my design aesthetic and my personal wardrobe, and there's so many things, you know, like I shop mostly at the thrift store, Craigslist, and just seeing things for their potential, you know?
Good.
So, yeah.
And if you say, for example, he walked into the room now, he's not going to walk into the room now, and you were going to say something to him, what would you say to him?
Oh, it wouldn't be about me. I think it'd be like, you know, something sentimental, like I missed you, or, yeah, I sometimes I feel like he would be very proud of me. And not that I pursued something that he, you know, envisioned, but it's interesting. He like had talked about in his youth, he almost was engaged to a woman whose family like had this like big China manufacturing company, which I don't remember the brand. I wish I did. But I wonder like if he's up there like orchestrating like yeah, no, he was a really incredible person. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
Ooh. I don't know. I guess meeting new people, I think I'm good at that. And I'm an only child, so maybe like I was always forced into situations where like I didn't have a sibling or someone to lean on all the time. So, you know, walking into, you know, rooms with strangers and feeling comfortable, I guess. I guess I've always been able to sort of do my own thing. Although it's just, like I say, social media makes it harder now, I think. Like, you feel content, and then if you kind of peek or look, and then you kind of start to like, well, am I okay? So what am I good at? Yeah, I guess just like not feeling anxious about what other people are thinking. Yeah.
Good. Well done. And what would you like to be better at?
Oh, I'd love to be better at working at so many things. I mentioned I'm a little bit ADD, and I think a lot of creatives tend to be like.
Agreed.
Especially nowadays, because there's just so many factors to your business. And somebody's told me this quote, and I try to remind myself of this all the time, even in having you come here today. Better done than perfect, right?
Yes.
So sometimes I wait until something is like, I think it's so perfect. But the truth is that in my personality, it's never going to be done. Like, it's never going to be truly perfect in my mind, you know, like everything being to a T. So if I don't ever really reveal that or show that or however you want to say it, present that, then everyone's missing out on it, or I'm missing out on it. So yeah, the quote, better done than perfect. I'm working on being okay in the process.
Good.
So.
And we're glad you embrace the process. We get to talk to you and share with the world. So see, we're glad. Putting it into action. When you turned 21, you were at Chapman, right?
Yeah, I was.
So we're going to go and talk to 21-year-old Laura and give her advice based on what you know now. What advice would you give your younger self?
You know, I was just talking about this with someone the other day, and I don't know exactly how old you are, so I can't say that maybe. I feel like when we were young, we had no understanding of like what was a major, like what those majors matter, what the jobs that like those majors would get you. And I'm hoping now that like youth have this infinite knowledge that we didn't have. But I even go back to like my younger self, and like I didn't know who I wanted to be. Like I thought I wanted to be like a female Keith Morrison, which I still think I would have been great at, like investigative journalism. I loved true crime before it got trendy, just so everyone knows that. I could have done it. I wish I would have done my true crime podcast before.
You can still do it.
People hopped on. My gosh, if you look at the number one the leading podcast, I'm telling you, maybe we gotta branch out.
Let's talk. Yeah. Let's talk. You can do it.
Anyway, what would I say to myself? I guess be open to okay, let me go back a little bit. So when I was young, I would when I'm talking about young, like 4 or 5 years old, I would rearrange my furniture, and my mom thought it was really bizarre. I had solid Ethan Allen wood furniture on carpet, and the fact that I could move pieces, she didn't understand it. But I always wanted, I needed to be inspired by the space I was in, I guess, even at that young of an age. And everywhere I've lived, I've always where I habitated, it had to be a certain way, and I wanted it to feel like an extension of me. And I think a lot of that is who I am. So going back to my 21-year-old self, what was I good at? For anybody, I think what you will be successful in is something you're going to naturally feel compelled to do. And I think now there's so many jobs that really can speak to that and you can make a living at. So if really you hone in on well, am I a good writer? Am I a good, how do I see myself? I think if I had been open to that and not really listened to adults being well, that's not a job, and really explored that part of myself, I think I would have gotten to this place a little bit sooner. Although I'm grateful for the process. Yeah, I didn't do anything with film school. Really, college would help me in the sense of figuring out who I was and all that. But I don't think school really, at least that program really helped me all that much. So.
That's good, though. Compelling example. Good example. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
That's a tough one. I think this is nothing related to the business things. You're going to be like, why did she say that? But I had a boss tell me that never let yourself gain more than 5 pounds. She used to weigh herself every day. She was this old lady named Phyllis. And she wore wigs that she literally stored on the floor. Her dog slept on them. They smelled horrible. But she would compulsively weigh herself all the time. And she would go on cruises all the time. She's like, oh, I gained 4 ounces. So anyway, I wish I had listened to that advice because, it's a lot easier to lose 5 pounds than it is to lose 65 pounds. So, so that's good advice in life, right? So never let yourself get too far off the wagon. And Excellent. Store your wigs on the floor.
2 great lessons there. Thanks for sharing.
But she had a full head of hair, by the way. She was not bald, but she was just too lazy to do her hair. Oh, so she would put the wig on. Don't ask me.
Okay. Good to know. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Wow.
I've had a little practice, though.
Yeah. I like to make people feel good, even if it... Oh, wait. I like to get to know people and make them feel good.
I love it. Great sentence. Good job. What is one new habit you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
I do listen. I feel like I listen more to the people in my life that are... encouraging me and guiding me to really take the steps. It took a lot for me to get to this place of expanding my inventory, not because I couldn't do it, but mostly because when I was gathering pieces that really weren't my personal aesthetic, it didn't feel personal to me. It wasn't if someone didn't like it, it's well, I don't really like that plate either, and it was a one-off. But when I decided to expand my inventory and purchase these new items, and I'm actually in the process of designing some, it felt a lot more vulnerable. I was worried that people wouldn't like it. So in some ways, just tuning out the noise. You asked me what I'm doing every day. I'm tuning out the noise of not worrying about the 3 people that might criticize it and really focusing on the people that are celebrating me and super excited for me.
And to follow up, how have you been able to build a strong group of friends and peers to help lift you up when we're kind of worried about things that we shouldn't be worried about?
I don't feel like I've had to shut very many people out in my life. I've been so fortunate just to meet wonderful people, and I feel so lucky with that. I have friends I've had for years and friends I've made, recently in the industry, and I don't know, I just feel very fortunate. Maybe I'm very taken as I'm very transparent. So I think maybe people that don't like that have been oh, okay, I'm not going to follow up with her or call her. And I don't even think twice about it because I have such a good circle. So yeah, I think I gravitate towards people who are very vulnerable. And by that, I think is a true sign of strength. we're all insecure on some level, but if you can voice those and be transparent and kind, I think just that's the people I like to surround myself with.
Yeah, agree 100%. You might have just acquired another new friend here. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see here.
I don't know. Your sentence was very strong. I don't know if you want to hang with me.
Yeah, of course. I definitely do. Now, we're very big readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. We love to read. So if there's 1, 2, or 3 books, it could be fiction or nonfiction, that you think people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books come to mind?
Okay, you have to remember, I am the worst with titles. So oh my God, I'll have to add this in later. Because the book that Patton Oswalt's wife wrote about the serial killer, that they actually have caught him now.
After she recently died.
Yeah, that he helped him and finish, and I cannot.
We'll put it in the show notes, but that's a great book.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Because I love true crime, and I thought that that poor woman made her life's work and it's pretty amazing that
the Golden Gate Killer.
Yes. But I don't think the book is called that.
Right, anyway, we'll add it. Don't worry. Anything else? Any other books?
Listen, I wish I was reading more than I am, and that's a goal of mine. Now, my new friends and you being you will help me get back on the book club train. Yeah,
I have a few recommendations for you that you'll love. We'll get to
cool.
Listen to them, read them. So definitely. Now, let me see here. Before we get to the final question, are you a sports fan at all?
My husband really wishes I was. He's a Jets fan, if you can call that sports. He likes everything. I mean, he could watch a dog show, but football is where he told me to focus on. So asking me if I'm a sports fan, I'm a sports fan. But don't ask me any questions.
Any questions? Well, let's see here. We'll tee it up this way.
Okay.
Say we're going to take you back, or say you're going to do a retro dance performance, going back to your performance theater days. Yeah. Okay, they're going to introduce Laura, and as you're walking out, what song is playing as your walk-up song? Okay,
well, the song that really gets me pumped up is Elton John's "I'm Still Standing." But the dance I'm picturing myself doing is sort of like a MC Hammer, too legit to quit.
Yes.
So the beat wouldn't quite work with those two. But yeah, maybe I always really enjoyed Elton John's "I'm Still Standing."
Great choice. Tell the people how they can reach you on your lovely favorite social media, wink, wink, and your website and all that.
So I taken a little bit of a hiatus on my business Instagram, but it's about to get interesting. So follow me on Dishwish Girl for that. Or my personal one is called The Wonders of Laura, and I do post way too many pictures of my child, but I'm much more up to date with that and creative other stuff as well.
Excellent. So before I ask you the final question, I just want to say thank you very much for appearing on the show.
Thank you so much. I hope I didn't rattle on too much.
Oh, no, you're perfect.
I feel like you asked me a question, I would just say random stuff.
Well, that's what they're for. They're supposed to inspire stories. So thank you. I love your energy and your story and your business. So I know that you went through a little bit of a tough time, but I respect your resilience because you're coming out of it now and you're moving forward.
You. So and to be all and going back to advice for people, it feels like a blur, so if you're in it now, just know that at some point it will feel like somebody else's, it honestly feels like someone else's story. There's been so much that's happened since then that's been beautiful and wonderful, and I'm in such a different place that even talking about it today with you, even though it was 3 years ago, it feels like ancient history. So somebody else out there, you'll get to that point.
Well, wonderful. Usually I have to prompt people to give last minute words of wisdom or advice, but you took the prompt and ran with it. So I love it. Thanks very much, and we'll be in touch real soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Feel free to email us at podcast@amaniexperience.com. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.